What's going on, gang? It's Keg back with another UFC Fight Night main event video. Had a little technical difficulties at the start, but we're here, boys. We're here. Sometimes you have to reset the computer. It happens. We're here. All right. So this week's UFC main event is an absolute banger. Bantamweight division. Basically, the person that wins this fight is going to fight either Aljamain Sterling or Petr Yan for the 135-pound strap in the UFC. So I expect it to be a great fight. Quick recap of last week and where we stand. If you watched the video, I gave out 3 bets last week, and we cashed all 3. So Danny Rodriguez money line and over 1.5 rounds in the Makhachev fight, minus 140, cash it. Danny Rodriguez money line and the over 2.5 rounds in the Makhachev fight at even money, cash it. And the third play, which I thought was pretty much the best dog on the card last week, and that was Billy Quarantillo around plus 150. We cashed that too. So we got the chicken in all 3 plays that I gave out on last week's video. We've hit 4 out of the last 5 main event videos, which you love to see. And for subscribers, if you watched the last Saturday night live betting show, Gavin, Joey, and I made about 42 units on the live betting show last weekend. And I know that sounds absolutely absurd, but Gavin hit Billy Quarantillo round 3 at plus 2,200. I hit Islam Makhachev round 4 at plus 1,200. I hit Lemos in round 1 at plus 300. So subscribers absolutely crushed on the UFC Fightcast last weekend. Now, as far as this weekend goes, I think Joey's got a play or 2 up there on our spreadsheet for tomorrow's UFC Fight Night. I've got 3 plays so far, and I'm going to add a 4th after this video. So a ton of UFC bets on the spreadsheet this weekend. If you want to sign up, you could go to runpuresports.com. You could use the promo code BETS25 off. You'll get 25% off the first month. Instead of spending $60, it'll cost you $45 for the first month. And it's the best deal in the business, if we're being honest. All right, so that's my sales pitch. With that said, let's break down the fight. I guess the first thing we should address in the main event is the gigantic elephant in the room. And that is TJ Dillishaw had a 2-year suspension given to him by USADA because he popped for EPO. Now, for those of you guys that don't understand, USADA is the United States Anti-Doping Agency, right? They pretty much monitor all U.S. athletes to see if they play fair and above board. Now, they check for banned substances, and unfortunately, TJ popped. And he popped for the same exact drug that Lance Armstrong popped for when he won all those tours in France on his little bicycle, right? So if you don't know what EPO is, it's basically blood doping, right? So EPO helps the body produce more red blood cells than an average body makes. Why does that help athletes? Because red blood cells are basically the vehicle in your body used to bring oxygen to your cells, right? And that also includes muscle cells. So that basically means that your body can endure way more physical activity than and the average body can that doesn't take EPO. So the big question right now in the fight for many people that are trying to handicap is how much of TJ Dillishaw and his title run was him, and how much of it was that EPO special sauce that he was on in that Henry Cejudo fight, right? That's a pretty easy question to answer. And I'll answer it, but let's table that for a minute and talk about TJ as a fighter. Then we'll circle back to the EPO. So TJ Dillishaw, if you don't know who he was, he's an excellent athlete, and he is a phenomenal mixed martial artist. Now, we haven't seen him in 2.5 years, and he is 35 years old now. So it's a fair question to ask, where's TJ Dillishaw at right now for tomorrow night's fight? Fair question. But to be fair to TJ, from May of 2014 to January 2019, he was the best bantamweight fighter on the planet. And it wasn't even close. He was levels above everybody else. He had, in that span, he had 2 wins over Renan Barão. He had a win over Rafael Assunção in his prime. He had 2 wins over Cody Garbrandt. And at that point, the whole world thought that Cody Garbrandt was absolutely unstoppable, beat him twice. And he had 1 split decision loss to Dominic Cruz. And if we're being honest, it was a really close fight. Really close. One judge gave it to Dillishaw. And if you would have told me that the winner at the end of that fight was TJ, I would have accepted it. So you can make an argument that the kid's been undefeated for the last 5 years, depending on how you score that Dominic Cruz fight. The bottom line is, like, TJ has ridiculous footwork. His hands are lightning fast. His strikes are incredibly accurate. He carries a ton of power for the 135-pound division. He's got a phenomenal wrestling base. He's got really solid top control. And his takedowns are above average. Now, TJ Dillishaw's cardio was always phenomenal, right? But now it gets questioned because of the EPO when he tested positive against Henry Cejudo. But he's the complete package, man. He's, we've never really seen his BJJ skills. We really don't know how good of a submission artist he is. But aside from that, he's about as complete of an MMA fighter as you can have. And he's still in the tail end of his prime. 35 years old is still the tail end of your prime. Add to that he hasn't fought in 2.5 years. So he's really like a 33-year-old kid because he hasn't taken any damage in 2.5 years. So, make no mistake about it. He is elite, and he's one of the best bantamweights in the world, hands down. But the big question mark is, how much of TJ Dillishaw's 5-year run and his success because of EPO, and how much of it was because of his skill? And that's also a really fair question to ask. But that's also an easy answer to quantify, right? Because Jeff Nowitzki has already proven it. If you don't know who Jeff Nowitzki is, he's the big swinging dick in the room, basically, that makes sure that dirty athletes don't ruin competitive mixed martial arts in the UFC. He's world-renowned, right? And like I said, he basically makes sure that athletes do not cheat. And that's why the UFC grabbed him and gave him some bullshit vice presidential title, because they needed somebody in the UFC to make sure that it wasn't like old school Pride, where guys were shooting up in the locker room and then going out to fight, right? So they brought Nowitzki in. But nevertheless, he single-handedly cleaned up, MMA in the UFC, right? And he's basically made these fighters have no choice but to play fair. And if you don't play fair, you're going to be embarrassed and you're going to be suspended for an extended period of time. So the answer of, was Dillishaw's 5-year run the special sauce, or was it his skill? We know the answer. When TJ Dillishaw popped for EPO against Henry Cejudo, which was, I think, January of 2019, Jeff Nowitzki went back and he tested all the blood and urine samples from Dillishaw's past 10 fights, right? And the only fight that he popped positive for was that last fight against Henry Cejudo. And why? He was killing himself, dropping down to 125. And that's, in the end, that's why he did it. Now, is that an excuse? No. A cheater's a cheater. If you cheat, you're basically a piece of shit, right? A cheater's a cheater. But regardless, now, we know for a fact that every performance that you saw from TJ Dillishaw prior to that loss against Henry Cejudo in 2019 was all TJ Dillishaw. Had nothing to do with EPO, had nothing to do with any kind of banned substance at all. It was all skill. So when you're capping tomorrow's fight, you have to expect the animal that TJ Dillishaw is during that sick 5-year run, because it's already been proven by Jeff Nowitzki that run was clean, man. Totally unadulterated. Can't argue clean. Okay, so that takes care of TJ. As far as Corey Sandhagen, I'm a big fan of Corey, man. He's one of the most special strikers that we've seen in the 135-pound division in any MMA promotion in the world. Now, part of the reason why Corey Sandhagen is so gifted a striker is he's almost 6 feet tall, and he's got a 71-inch reach, man, which for the division is insane. When you combine that frame in a division where he's fighting fighters that look like legitimate midgets, 5'3", 5'2", 5'5", against him in every fight, you combine that frame with his footwork in the cage, his knockout power in all limbs, including and especially his leg kicks and his knees, right? You combine his effortless ability to switch stances, it leaves anybody that's trying to fight Corey Sandhagen with an extremely hard puzzle to solve, because his frame is so unique. He's so gifted as a striker. It's a really hard nut to crack to try to figure out how to beat him, how to get inside his range, because his use of range is phenomenal. So that's why he's won 7 of 8 fights in the UFC, right? And if we have seen TJ Dillishaw struggle with anything in the cage, we've seen him struggle against fighters that can move as well as he can in the cage, right? And those struggles that we've seen him have are against fighters that are his size comparably. Guys that are 5'4", 5'5". Now if we're looking for, I guess, a chink in the armor, something that Corey Sandhagen struggles against, it's probably the fact that if you work hard enough, you can get Sandhagen to the ground, right? He's got 8 wins and he's got 7 wins in the UFC out of 8 fights. What's the one fight that he lost to? And not by accident, based on his skill set, it was the fight against Aljo, right? Aljo had no issue using his wrestling base to get Corey to the ground. And once he got him to the ground, he submitted him rather easily, right? So I think that Corey Sandhagen is world class on the feet, but really human on the ground. And tomorrow night, it's going to be TJ Dillishaw's easiest path to victory to get Corey Sandhagen to the ground and basically just wrestle fuck him to death. Now, I do think that TJ Dillishaw is a gifted striker, okay? And I think he's probably as gifted a striker as Corey Sandhagen is. And if they were the same height and if they had the same reach, I would probably pick TJ to catch Corey at some point during the fight. And even if he didn't, he still has a legitimate grappling advantage. The problem is he isn't the same height and reach. Corey Sandhagen towers over him. So if we think that they are both incredible on the feet, right? Give me the guy with the 6-inch height advantage and the 4-inch reach advantage. And personally, I think that 4-inch reach advantage is skeptical. I think that's being kind to TJ Dillishaw. My guess is it's probably closer to a 5 or 6-inch reach advantage, right? But with all that said, there is absolutely a path to victory tomorrow night for TJ Dillishaw. No doubt about it. You can't deny it, right? If TJ finds success in his takedowns early in the fight, it's only going to get easier for him to score takedowns as the fight progresses, right? So for the people that are looking to back TJ Dillishaw in the fight, I think that you take the decision prop at plus 600 because I think it's more live than the price tag may suggest, right? Like I just said, I can see him wrestle fucking Corey Sandhagen to death en route to a nice plus 600 decision victory. It's live. It could happen. Now, our guy Tyler, who is a Rum Pure Bets member, he asked me what I thought about the TJ submission prop at plus 1,200. And I think Tyler basically figured that if TJ can get him to the ground, why can't he get a submission off the way that Aljamain Sterling got a submission off, right? I think theoretically that's possible, but my issue is we've never really seen TJ show us how good his submission skills and his chops are, because we already knew going into that Aljo Sandhagen fight that if the fight got to the ground, we already knew what Aljo's submission props and chops were. We knew how good he is. He could submit anybody from anywhere. He's a Matt Serra disciple. Matt Serra is one of the best in the world at BJJ, or at least teaching BJJ. So we knew if it got to the ground, Aljo was going to lock it up, right? We can't exactly say the same thing for TJ Dillishaw because we've never really seen his BJJ chops in the cage. During that run, he was knocking everybody out. Done. Dead. So, I think it's more unlikely if TJ finds success getting takedowns. I think it's more unlikely that he will get a submission off on Corey than the way that we saw Aljo get that win in Corey's only loss in the UFC. So quickly, I guess I'll go through, each way I would approach backing each fighter, because some of you guys are set in your ways. You're like, I'm backing this guy. I don't give a fuck what Keg says. I don't care. So for those people, I'll at least try to guide you in the direction that I think that you should go. If you're looking to back TJ, okay, I think you either take the decision prop at plus 600, or you take him double chance by knockout or decision at plus 200. In my opinion, I think that those are probably the two best ways to approach betting on TJ Dillishaw. Now, if you're looking at back Corey Sandhagen, I think that you either take him by knockout at plus 135, which is available currently at FanDuel, or you take him double chance by decision or knockout at minus 135-ish, which is available at Bet365. Because I think a submission is pretty unlikely from Corey. I guess you can get fucked and by a club and sub where he drops TJ and then just grabs a neck and you end up losing that bet. But, I think it's unlikely. I'm willing to take my chances there that if Corey's going to win the fight, it's either going to be by knockout or it's going to be by decision. I don't think he's going to submit him. Now, as far as how I'm personally going to approach the fight, and I've thought really long about this fight, man. Hours, like 20 hours this week. And right now, I have 3 bets on the Run Pure Bet spreadsheet. None of them have to do with the fight at all. After this video, the play that I give you guys, I'm going to throw on the spreadsheet because it's only right. If I'm betting it, I'm going to throw it on the spreadsheet, right? So in terms of how I'm going to approach the fight, I have to side with Corey Sandhagen. Now, if we're talking about the money line, right, and we're talking about implied probability, and we're talking about true odds, there's probably value right now on TJ Dillishaw plus 165. I think that's heavy, man. And I'll tell you why. People don't realize how good he is because he hasn't been around for 2.5 years. Half the UFC fan base right now came in at the pandemic. They don't have a fucking clue who TJ Dillishaw is. Half the people betting on this fight tomorrow night have never seen TJ Dillishaw fight a fight ever. Because the UFC, and admittedly Dana White, basically said the UFC fan base all but doubled because of the way they handled the pandemic as opposed to other sports. Okay? He hasn't fought since January 2019. So the majority of the people betting on the fight never even saw TJ Dillashaw. The majority of the people that are going to watch on ESPN tomorrow haven't even seen TJ Dillashaw. Okay? So I think plus 165 is a little expensive. He was the best bantamweight in the world for 5 years. And he didn't pop on any test that Nowitzki tested him on, aside from his last fight against Henry Cejudo. Okay, so that was all him. So I think plus 165, there's probably value on the money line. But fuck the money line. I'm not taking the money line. Now, where I have personally struggled is deciding, do I take Corey Sandhagen by knockout at plus 135? Or do I take him by knockout or decision at minus 138? That's pretty much been my focus this week. In the end, because of how high Corey Sandhagen's output is per minute in the UFC, his pure volume that he throws, I decided to take Sandhagen by knockout at plus 135. Now, why? Because The kid lands 6.85 significant strikes per minute, which is insane. Okay? That's almost 7 significant strikes per minute. And he only absorbs about 3.5 significant strikes per minute. So I used to think TJ Dillishaw's volume was great. But compared to what Corey Sandhagen does, compared to the volume, compared to the pace that he sets, if you're telling me in a 25-minute fight, this kid's going to land 7 significant strikes per minute, then I think one of those strikes is going to catch DJ at some point during the fight, and it's going to drop him. So I think that the value play is Corey Sandhagen by knockout at plus 135. Because let's not forget, we've seen TJ's chin shit the bed. He got dropped, I think, in both Cody Garbrandt fights. He got knocked dead against Henry Cejudo. Now, he has had 2.5 years to rehabilitate that chin, so maybe it's better. But if you've been cracked once and you've been dropped, it can happen again easily. And the older you get, the easier it gets. So if you're telling me 7 significant strikes per minute for 25 minutes, I think one of those either check hooks from an unorthodox stance, like from southpaw when Corey's switching up, whether it's a question mark kick that comes up high and taps TJ on the chin, whether it's a knee on a level change, like the way Frankie Edgar got fucking dropped dead cold. I just think that Sandhagen is so dangerous. At some point in a 25-minute fight, he's going to catch this kid, and I think he's going to drop him, and I think he's going to put him away, because I think he's the second best bantamweight in the world right now, and it's going to be up to him whether or not he can beat Petr Yan. I don't know if he could, maybe, but it's going to be up to him in the end. So give me Corey Sandhagen by knockout plus 135 in the fight. That's the way I'm going to go. So I'll be live tomorrow afternoon for the UFC Fightcast, and it's going to be available on the Run Pure Bets YouTube channel for the public. Now, we've been crushing our Fightcasts. I have not made them public because I was making the NASCAR races public. You're welcome. I mean, what we do in NASCAR is a little ridiculous. But there's no NASCAR. We're on a 2-week break. We got the Olympics. So tomorrow, the UFC Fightcast will be public. It'll be open to everybody. If you guys want to come hang out in the chat, come hang out. I'll be live with Gavin. Tyler's going to pop in. Hopefully Joey pops in for a bit. And it'll start about 4 o'clock Eastern. So come hang out with the boys. Let's cash some tickets. Also, I think the only other content on the channel tomorrow, JJ's going to have his normal MLB live show Saturday afternoon. That'll be on the Run Pure Bets YouTube channel, so you guys can check that out before we go live. And other than that, boys, I hope your action runs pure this weekend. I hope you crush. I'll see you guys tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Join the movement, Run Pure. Year 1 in the books. We're up about 80 units. It's hard to argue with for $60 a month. So join the movement, guys. Let's go. I'll see you tomorrow at 4. Later.